So we're driving here today with Richard Ferlazzo, one of, in my opinion, the most important people in the GM empire. He's the head of design for Holden here in Australia. He's worked on pretty much every Commodore since the VN, worked very closely on the interior for the VR, I think it was, Richard.
Correct.
Right up to the point where you were leading the design on the VE and the VF, am I right there?
Yeah.
There we are. And you're a bit of a career boy, kind of like the footballer that's famously played for one club his whole life.
Yeah, it's true. I've been with Holden. This is my 30th year.
This is the 30th year, there you
is.
go.
I'm up for parole soon, however. But look, I know everyone says it, but it just goes so quickly.
Sure.
Particularly in this game where it takes 4 to 5 years to develop a new product. So you want to hang around and see it on the road as opposed to clay models that sit in the studio.
How does a design start? If we take the VE, for example, the $1 million or $billion baby?
$1 billion baby.
$1 billion baby.
Yeah.
If you're leading design on that and you've got all of these people reporting to you, does it all start with your pen, or is it a team that all get to pitch designs? How do we arrive at the VE?
Yeah, it's always a team effort. Look, people can lead projects and they often get the kudos for it.
Glory.
I'm often getting the kudos for work that everyone else has done, but hey, que sera, sera. But no, it's always a team effort. Very rarely can you do a car by yourself. Occasionally for a concept car you might, you can assign someone, but for production cars, it's way too complex. So it's always a team effort.
And how do you find the process? I always wonder when you've got obviously the designers, but also engineers and accountants, how do you find that process of having to meet all of those needs? You'll design something and then the engineers will say, well, that won't fit. And the accountants will say, that'll make it 50 cents cheaper per part. Please.
What can I say? They're incorrigible.
Yeah, I bet.
Look, that is design, and particularly in automotive, where you're talking high volume, high cost. And the profits from each car is not great. So you're really talking high volumes. Therefore, you're quite right in saying a $1 saving here or there, in the end, means a lot of money.
It would do.
So you really need to be efficient. That's why the design and engineering process is iterative and simultaneous. So it's not like you can just design something, throw it over the fence and say, can you guys make this? Right from the start, you've got all the departments involved. So you have marketing, planning, manufacturing, engineering, finance, design, and indeed, we are already, like most car companies, planning our products for the next 5-10 years ahead.
Of course you would.
So it's not like a brief lands on your desk and say, start working on this.
Yeah.
No, we're well aware of it coming. We know it's coming in the pipeline, and then you kind of finally get to it, and by which time you've got other things like technology and engineering inputs to work their way into it. So you work very closely with engineers to work out a package before you can even start sketching.
What's your fondest car memory, either as an adult or even as a child, really?
Wow, fondest memory.
Do you have one?
I remember seeing the GTR Rex on show, Tirana GTR Rex on show when it was first launched. Would have been around 1970, 71. We went to an auto show and we just loved this vehicle.
Sure.
My father took us to the Holden dealership when the HQ range was released.
Wow.
So I have 2 older brothers and we're pouring all over these cars. There were Monaros and Statesmans, and it was the bee's knees. But those things left a memory.
So is there a point then, I mean, you mentioned the HQ and the Tirana, is there a point when you knew that you wanted to be a car designer, but maybe even more Holden specifically?
Yeah, well, Dad had an EH for many years, and that still is my favourite Holden.
That's still a very popular car.
Well, it is, and classically designed. I love them, and he loved his as well. We had it for the longest time. That left a mark, and but as a kid you're impressionable, and I was a Holden guy. Then you have a combination of the ability to draw and have a fascination with design and a fascination with the cars. These things are going to collide, aren't they?
Of course. As a designer, what is your proudest achievement in 30 plus years, 30 at Holden and more before that?
Oh wow. Look, Effigy was a special moment. I mean, I probably can't go past that. It's rare that someone gets an opportunity to design a concept car of their own idea and see it through to what is effectively products that cost over $1 million to produce, if you count all the labour, of course.
So the concept alone?
Well, most concept cars, they would run around the $2 to $3 million mark.
That's remarkable.
That was a cheaper one because we did it as a labour of love.
Sure. Bit of a skunkworks project.
It was a skunkworks project, so that's how we got it approved actually at the time, even though it wasn't a future vision for a Holden product that we would sell. It had great value in promoting the brand, raising the awareness of design and engineering in Australia.
I think it was named the concept of the year in America, but also the hot rod of the year.
Yeah, well, it was had a broad appeal, which was again quite gratifying that it did receive hot rod of the year and yes, North American concept car of the year.
It's incredible.
And when we did have it on the show in the States at various shows, people just loved it. They came up and would say, wow, what's that? I've never seen something like that. What's a Holden? I said, yes, Holden is Australia's division of GM.
What a great way to draw attention.
Well, look, and it actually was a good timing as well, because we also had the GTO and the G8 Pontiac.
That's right.
On sale.
What a special time.
Well, it was, because what it also reaffirmed to the American public was, okay, these cars are sourced out of Australia, but we've got gasoline in our veins.
Yeah.
And the same people that are passionate about cars like this also make the cars on the road for you. So that, it adds a great deal of credibility.
From all of the design in the automotive world, is there a feature or an element of another car from elsewhere and a different brand that you wish you had come up with?
Well, it probably isn't so much a feature, because we are designers, not so much inventors, and things kind of evolve. So by the time they do hit the road, we're aware of the technology coming.
Sure.
So it's no real revelation there. But what we, as designers, what we do appreciate in other people's work is the way they execute these elements. And we would start with the body form, clever highlighting, proportion of the vehicles, so you've got mass in the right spot. And when we talk about proportion, in big terms, that means the relationship between the length, the width, the height, and in particular the relationship to the wheels. The wheels are such an important part, of course, of vehicles, and it's the location, the stance. They may seem obvious things, but not all cars are beautifully proportioned. And it's that whole relationship and how it sits on the road and how purposeful it is that really rings true.
Why aren't all cars beautiful?
You have to understand that not all car companies have the singular focus of creating a beautiful car. It's a commodity, and profit often is the motivator.
Yeah.
So it depends on the objective of the company, and some are more focused on creating a vehicle that will sell in high volume with high profit, and therefore they may need to compromise on other enablers.
Yeah.
So there'll be the packaging itself, the engine in its configuration in the front, whether it has long overhangs, short overhangs. The size of the wheels is extremely important to any designer.
It would be.
And we know that the smaller the wheel, the cheaper it will be, because all the ingredients around that unsprung weight and the suspension kit and everything that goes with it rises as the size of the wheel rises. And that puts them at a competitive disadvantage if they're focusing on a value brand. So largely it will be because of their position in the market. If it's a value brand, they need to be very careful about where they spend the money. And that's why you see luxury cars or sports cars are enabled by larger wheels or a package inside that's smaller, because you can compromise.
One of the things we see a lot from our readers when a new car is revealed, and look, it's probably often true as well, but we see a lot of complaints that the new car that's been revealed looks an awful lot like a car that's already been on the market for a year or two.
Okay.
Is it actually possible, as you've said, very long lead time on any new model, that you've really taken inspiration from another car so recently on the market? Is it more about a trend than looking at another car and saying, hey, I like how that looks, let's do that?
If we're talking about a year, absolutely impossible to turn it around that quickly. Even for a mild facelift, it would still take at least 2 years, probably 3 years, because these things take a long time to tool up and develop and to test. Do cars influence each other? Absolutely, but not that quickly. So that would be a case of a converging trend and just who happened to be on there first.
Yeah.
And again, that's where we come back to concept cars. They set trends. And many people have asked us, well, then why would you do that? Why do you put a concept car out there and tell them your secrets? Well, it can work in the converse, where it actually marks your territory.
Of course.
The designer says,
this is what we're working on.
This is what we're doing for our brand.
Stay away.
Yeah. And, despite what people think that all cars look the same, the truth is no designer wants to be accused of plagiarism.
No.
So that's when you get those moments where, damn, I wish I had come up with that form.
Sure.
They're there now, we need to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
So that's the true value of the concepts there, and also tells the public, this is what we're working on. It's probably a little bit out of reach right now, but it conditions them for the development in that direction.
What's to come.
Yeah, and that'll influence other people, of course. So they'll say, okay, that's a new proportion or a new idea. We'll take that and we'll move somewhere else. And these trends kind of overlap a little bit.
Now, obviously, you've led the design on, well, at Holden for quite a while, but in particular on the Commodore, which is Australia's favourite when it comes to the Holden brand. What's the favourite Commodore model that you've worked on?
Look, it's really hard because VE was the first in a very long time when it was truly a ground-up vehicle. The others were heavily modified from an Opel beginning, but seriously, we changed so much of it, there wasn't much left of Grandpa's axe.
Yeah.
The VT was a beautiful car in its time and spawned a lot of different variants, including the Monaro, which was a great car to work on.
That's right.
So it's a toss-up between those two, certainly VT and VE.
Which is more your baby?
Well, I shall say then the VE Sport Wagon is dear to my heart, because at the time we were exploring, well, do we go into another wagon body style, or do we make the big leap into SUVs? Now, we knew we had SUVs that we could draw on from the rest of the GM empire. So I felt there was a sport wagon lurking in that great proportion. And we explored it a little bit and determined that we don't need a longer wheelbase, we can use a sedan wheelbase.
That's part of the nicest thing about it too.
Well,
the proportions are exceptional.
And of course the VE wheelbase is longer than VT, so it was already a size ideally suited. And then we could afford a nice sporty roofline, and the rear tailgate that opens way into the roofline. It's extremely spacious inside. It's quite deceptive, as we see when drive past.
The VF2, indeed.
Well,
yeah,
thank you.
yeah. I planned that.
So we may not have created the sport wagon genre, but we certainly did a very good example of it. And over the years, as we developed it further, we added the bright mouldings and the LED tail lamps, which enhanced an already fairly classical design. So the proportion and the layout of it works beautifully. By bringing those new technologies with it, it keeps it in vogue, and people can still appreciate the design. And like I say, it brings up the speed for technology.
I don't mind saying the VF and VF2 as well are easily some of the best work that's ever come out of the brand, I think. And you sort of left the best till last, I think, with those.
Well, look, I think there have been a lot of classic Holdens over the years. I'm not sure Australians have always appreciated that, or they always look to the cachet of European brands.
Yeah, we're a fussy bunch.
Yeah, a bit fickle at times we are as a nation, aren't we?
Yeah.
But I believe Australians can be very proud of what the auto industry has done here, not just for Holden, but Ford and previously Chrysler and any other automotive body that's had design engineering in this country. We've always punched above our weight as an industry, not just by brand.
Is it hard, as you say, we are fussy and fickle at times, is it hard to, and with so much on the line, is it hard to gauge what the buyer is going to want? Do you dread the day that the new model is revealed and the response is not what you hoped it would be?
Well, it's interesting, whether it's Opel or otherwise. You read the blogs and people say, oh, that's not a Commodore.
There's been a bit of that, unfortunately.
Well, there is, and I can understand it, but at the same time, I think when they drive it, they'll understand that indeed it really is. We all know that a lot of the Commodores over the years have been global vehicles that we have adapted for our purposes.
That's right.
And the same applies. Whether it was manufactured here or not, the car would have evolved in the way that it is for next year. We've been very fortunate in some ways that we've been able to indulge ourselves with a large rear-wheel drive V8 and V6, but nowhere else in the world. This new car drives beautifully, and with the V6 all-wheel drive in particular, I will challenge anyone to say that it won't perform, like a Holden should. To me, the Commodore developing as the landscape changes really shows that we are adapting as we should. And if anything, it's probably some of the public that's probably more nostalgic than we are. We understand the industry and we know we need to move on, and so does the car. And once they drive it and understand that, this is a modern car, this is what it ought to be, I think those mindsets will change. And we need to be patient in the short term, but in the longer term, I think they'll appreciate it.
I hope you're right. So here we are, we're back at Holden now. Richard Ferlazzo, thank you so much for joining us. and I look forward to seeing what the rest of your team puts together in the years ahead.
Well, that was a lot of fun. Thank you for the
I'm glad to hear
opportunity. And yep, stay tuned because we're going to be here for a very long time.
Good to hear it. Thank you very much, Richard.
Cheers, buddy.